Up until very recently, when somebody said Chinese motorcycle to you, you would picture something like a Boom BD250 that shows up in a box from Amazon and is just a little bit junky.
Oh my God, this thing is a cheap piece of crap.
Bikes that are more likely to fall apart or set themselves on fire before they reach 50 miles per hour. But while you've been laughing at the Tao Taos and Lifan scooters of the world, one Chinese motorcycle company has been quietly building an empire. They've been competing in racing on the global stage. They've sold over 1 million motorcycles a year, and they have shared ownership with Volvo. Yeah, the giant automotive company. And no, I'm not talking about CFMoto, which we all think is taking over the motorcycling world. I'm talking about QJ Motors, who might be the most ambitious Chinese OEM on the market today. Let's find out why. QJ Motors is the motorcycle arm of the Qianjiang Group, founded all the way back in 1985 in Zhejiang, China. Also, I apologize for any of my Mandarin pronunciation. In the beginning, they were just another Chinese company making small displacement scooters for urban commuters. They were cranking out scooters for the domestic market at a high level, producing mostly quantity, not necessarily quality. And remember, in China, vehicles of a certain age and/or mileage are meant to be surrendered to be destroyed. So as a result, two-wheeled vehicles were often seen as disposable. They were made very cheaply so that people who bought them could quickly unload them when the time came and just get a new one whenever they needed one. But by 2005, QJ was thinking big picture. They pulled a power move and they bought Benelli. Benelli is one of those ancient Italian motorcycle manufacturers that, while providing a lot of color and history throughout the years, had fallen into relative obscurity by the time that QJ Motors had picked them up. So why was buying a practically defunct Italian motorcycle make a strategic move? By acquiring Benelli, QJ gained a window into European styling. They were able to assume the heritage angle that had proved very successful for many other motorcycle makers. Looking at you, Royal Enfield. By buying Benelli, QJ gained a greater insight into the scope of engineering, building out their own IP, and getting full-sized motorcycles in their range, not just small little scooters. So how serious is QJ Motors today? While they haven't landed stateside just yet, QJ Motors has been working quietly in the background, making serious moves through partnerships, design and product innovations, and getting involved in racing. QJ Motors sells about 1.5 million motorcycles per year across a bunch of different brands. They operate 5 global brands, including QJ Motor, Benelli, Kiwi, and Morbidelli MVP. Not to be confused with Frankie Morbidelli, who is a MotoGP rider. He has no affiliation as far as I know. QJ has a unique strategy with their umbrella of brands, capitalizing on existing brand loyalty or tailoring it to a specific market, all while maintaining the production in-house. Benelli is a perfect example of this. QJ owns the brand outright, but they've leveraged it to get into the US and the UK with the Benelli Leoncino and the TRK 502. Most of these bikes are designed in Italy, but built in China. Kiwi is their budget global brand. QJ rebadges these motorcycles to sell them in Southeast Asia, South America, and other parts of the world. It's the same strategy that CFMoto is utilizing in their CF Lite brand, where they're kind of segmenting their more flagship, powerful, and global motorcycles with more of these budget-friendly options. QJ also owns MVP, which stands for Moto Bologna Passione, which sounds very exotic, doesn't it? MVP has recently merged with Morbidelli, which, you guessed it, is another defunct Italian manufacturer from days gone past. And of course, QJ sells motorcycles under the QJ brand itself. So what I'm getting at is the scope of QJ is massive. They've got this indomitable Hydra head that's just gobbling up customer bases all over the world. Even prior to MV Agusta's acquisition by the Pierre Mobility Group, QJ had plans to build an adventure bike for them, which would have given them access to MV Agusta's engines as well. This would have been very similar to the partnership that CFMoto has with KTM, for example, sharing design and distribution networks while outsourcing manufacturing to keep the high-end products affordable and the high-volume products of good quality. But once Pierre, the owner of KTM, bought MV Agusta, the deal was nixed. But weirdly enough, you can still see some of MV Agusta's influence on the larger QJ offerings by way of their design cues, even their exhaust tips, and some other parts of the engines. In recent years, QJ has invested millions into R&D, state-of-the-art facilities, and even a proving ground for them to test their machines. They've even started dipping their toe into World Supersport and Grand Prix racing, trying to prove to the world that they are a formidable force. They're not just making Grom clones or Harley-Davidson training motorcycles anymore, that's for sure.
You know how much we love Rockform phone cases and handlebar mounts around here, but did you know they have an entire lineup of products that can further take advantage of your existing case? Your Rockform phone case is literally the key that unlocks a whole ecosystem of other products aimed to make your life way easier. Rockform's cases have notoriously strong magnets, like really strong. So strong that if my phone is in my pocket, it will sometimes pull my kitchen cabinet doors open if I stand too close to the handles. That's literally happened. To further take advantage of the world's most magnetic case, you could get yourself the magnetic power bank. The power bank is so strong you can attach it to your phone and set it in your motorcycle tail bag or backpack and not have to worry about them losing contact and missing out on valuable charge time, which is a huge game changer for motorcyclists on the go. You can also take advantage of their car accessories like the wireless magnetic car vent mount that keeps your phone magnetically mounted to your car's air vent while it's charging up wirelessly. If you're a motorcyclist, skip the cheap accessories and get the best of the best that's going to stand the test of time with Rockform. They've been a long-time supporter of the channel for over 4 years now, and I truly stand by their brand and their products. I've used them daily all the time. If you want in on the Rockform action, click the link in the description and use the code YN25 to get 25% off your order. That's YN25 for 25% off of your order. Thank you to Rockform for supporting today's video. Now let's get back into it.
So how does a Chinese scooter company end up being such a powerful and serious force in global motorcycle production? Well, as any trust fund kid who's currently the CEO of a startup will tell you, it never hurts having rich parents. QJ Motors is owned by Qianjiang, and Qianjiang is owned by the Geely Group. Geely also owns Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, 50% of Smart, as well as a 10% stake in Mercedes-Benz and a 17% share of Aston Martin. So I think it's fair to say that QJ has some serious resources ready at their disposal. Just think of how good Ducati's become ever since their acquisition by the VW/Audi group in 2012. Being owned by a greater automotive superpower gives you access to engineering technology, pathways for government compliance, and not to mention a lot of capital you can put into R&D, design, and marketing. If you want street cred in the motorcycle world, you have to compete on the global stage. What wins on Sunday sells on Monday, right? So if QJ Motors wants more people to know that they don't just build tiny little Chinese scooters, motorcycle racing is not a bad way to go about it. QJ Motors has a team that competes in both Moto3 and Moto2, which is the Grand Prix level of racing. While they're not leading the pack, they've put on some points on the board for the 2025 season, which is a big accomplishment for a company that practically no one has heard of before. But just a quick note about the Moto2 and Moto3 teams that QJ pilots out, they're actually utilizing the Spec Series engine that Triumph provides in the Moto2 category with a Bosco Scuro or Calyx chassis, and in Moto3 they're either using a Honda or KTM bike, so not exactly a QJ Motors bike. But in 2024, QJ actually put a motorcycle to go and compete in the World Supersport stage with the SRK 800RR, which features a 776cc inline 4, which actually is their own motorcycle. They may not be dominant, but the fact that they're out there racing against Panigales, R9s, and ZX6s really says a lot about the brand. So what motorcycles does QJ actually sell? Well, a whole heck of a lot of them, turns out. They've got the SRK line of naked bikes ranging in displacement from 125cc to 900cc, with varying trim levels in every category. The top of the line being the SRK 900 that puts down about 120 horsepower from its parallel twin engine. Then there are the SRK-R fully fared sport bikes. In this category, you'll find the SRK 800RR, which they use in World Supersport. Then they have the SRT adventure bikes with a massive spread of displacements among those as well. If you look at any of these motorcycles and squint, the resemblance starts to become glaringly obvious. The SRT 300 looks like a Tenere, the SRT 600 looks like a Pan America, and the SRT 800 looks like a BMW GS. That's a major problem with this company. Even if the quality isn't there, there just isn't that much original to hang on to. Of all the 100 motorcycles they produce, whether it's sport bikes, cruisers, scramblers, adventure bikes, or anything else in between, they're clearly just like off-market copycat versions of bikes that already exist. So the big question is, will QJ Motors come to the United States? They brought the SRK 900, SRK 800RR, SVT 650X V-twin adventure bike, how original, and even a 561cc V4 cruiser, which is kind of interesting. With super competitive pricing, it's not unrealistic to imagine these models coming to the US, even if the displacements are a little bit oddball. CFMoto already laid the groundwork and proved it can be done, having laid out a pretty solid dealer network and building up a reputation as a solid brand over the last 5 years. QJ already has a degree of presence here in the United States with Benelli, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing QJ branded bikes front and center. I think the real hurdle is going to be brand recognition and trust. Even if the build quality is up to snuff, I think a lot of American riders are going to have a hard time looking past these motorcycles as anything more than just copycat bikes. The fact that QJ hasn't even shied away from the fact that these models are, quote, heavily inspired by other motorcycles kind of shows you the disconnect between that culture of riding versus what we expect in the Western world. But honestly, I think that's the only remaining obstacle. In the era of cultural nihilism, I don't really think that new, younger riders care that much about brand loyalty or cachet. They just want the best bike at the lowest possible price. And we've already seen CFMoto cleaning up shop, exploiting that exact philosophy. QJ Motors is not a household name here in America yet, but with a racing presence, a massive global footprint, and $1 billion backing from Geely, I think they're well on their way. I give it another few years before they're not just seen as sketchy, strange, copycat motorcycles, but real alternatives for financially disadvantaged riders that can certainly give CFMoto a run for their money. But what do you guys think? Would you actually ride a motorcycle from QJ, or are you apprehensive about any Chinese motorcycle and you wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole? It feels like we're on the bleeding edge of a brand new era in motorcycling where Chinese bikes are demanded to be taken seriously, where QJ and CFMoto are going to be seen as legitimate competitors to the European and Japanese hegemony. QJ Motors has the capital and CFMoto's laid out the groundwork, so what's gonna stop them? Thanks so much for checking out today's video. I really appreciate it. Leave me a comment down below and hit a like on this video if you enjoyed it, and check out this next video right over here. Catch the next one. See you later.
Keep watching Yami Noob.